Welcome back. The Africa CEO Forum 2020 is expected to dwell on negotiations on the basis of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, which should become effective by June next year. Now, to set the background for the summit, top executives of the forum met with some Lagos-based corporations to sample the preparedness of investors for the AfCFTA implementation. Now, after that event, Channel TV business correspondent Temple Ashaju speaks with the chief executive of the forum, Mr. Amir Ben Yahmed, who explains the strategy of the private sector in the AfCFTA.
I think it's going to be very relevant as we have started that last edition in Kigali. It was right at the moment where the CFTA entered into force. And now we're getting into the negotiation phase in governments. Minister of Commerce are already starting to discuss some of the issues affecting the CFTA. And this is the right time for the African private sector to seize the moment and to make their voice heard on all the issues that are going to be negotiated.
Now you have started that, hearing the voices of CEOs, some of which have been, laid bare this evening here in Lagos. The CEOs have raised their concerns around the infrastructure challenges and a host of other issues. How will the forum next year address all of those gaps?
This was a very interesting event because, as you know, Nigeria has been a little bit as a latecomer to the party, but you have seen from the discussion that took place here that most of the CEOs are very enthusiastic about what's going to happen with the CFTA because they see it as a tool for the country to try to reform itself, try to invest in infrastructure, try to think of all the ways that Nigeria can be competitive in this integrated market, and so I think it will be very important for Nigeria to be a very strong actor. And we have seen at the latest event in Kigali that there was already a big turnout from Nigerian private sector. We had more than 150 participants from Nigeria, and it really shows that the Nigerian private sectors are really ready to take a leadership role in this theme.
So it was more about the private sector this evening, but one would have really expected to see the policymakers, the public sector as well, but that didn't happen.
Yes, but as the Africa CEO Forum has always been built on trying to create the strongest platform for the African private sector. So when we started the event, the first three editions, we didn't engage with the public-private sector because we wanted to be very strong, to know exactly what the platform would be, what were the themes we want to focus on. And now, the same thing is happening with the CFTA. We really have to gather together to bring together all the force of the African private sector to discuss the issues on an equal footing with the public policy makers.
As a multilateral forum, there are several multilateral financial institutions like the Afrexim Bank, the AFDB, a host of other institutions like that are trying to pull forces together to encourage the reality of the AfCFTA. How much of influence will the Africa CEO Forum or its network, put in all of this force together to see that we can actualize this dream in particular?
First of all, if you know, when the CEO Forum was created already in 2012, it was a long time ago, it's 10 years, the African private sector didn't have at all the visibility and the power that it has now. By getting together all these leaders from the private sector, we managed to put the focus on private sector-led growth in Africa, and we plan to do exactly the same in the backdrop of the CFTA, because the private sector voice needs to be heard. The institution that you are mentioning, it's not their role. Most of them are in the financing role, trying to help private sector, public infrastructure investment. Their role is not to represent the African private sector, and our role as the Africa CEO Forum is to be as an independent platform, trying to make our voice heard. And you see, you've been here in Abidjan, in Kigali. The way we have done this is exceptionally powerful. And I think in this second phase now, The private sector will need to get together. We're going to try to bring together the 200 biggest private African corporation during the next forum and do a special summit within the Africa CEO Forum to decide on the issues that we want to push towards the African Union, towards the and all the bearer of the CFTA. The forum next year will put our emphasis on two things. Of course, we'll have the CFTA backdrop and all the negotiation that will be taking place in the coming months and years. And the other theme that is very important to us is also the rise of a new form of capitalism everywhere in the world, and that African corporation has to anticipate that movement and try to rethink the role that they have in terms of contribution to society in general.
And still talking about trade within the African continent now, the Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Muda Yusuf, believes that Nigeria needs to address institutional issues around the policing of borders and scale up capacity. He was speaking this morning on Channels Television's Business Morning. Do listen.
We need to look at the institutional problems around the policing of the borders. Because if you have this much difference, that means there was an issue with the policing of the borders in the first place. So we need to examine that and see how we can scale up capacity, institutional capacity to man the borders. Secondly, we need to look at our policy and regulatory environment. We need to look at our tariff policy, because if you have the kind of differential we have in tariffs between Nigeria and neighboring countries, this problem will continue to recur. Take the example of vehicles. The tariff on vehicles is 70%. The tariff in neighboring countries is just about 10% or less. So why will you not have all this problem of smuggling all over the place? And it even makes the job of the customs even more difficult. Because the higher the tariff, the higher the challenge of enforcement and compliance. So we need to look at the tariff properly. The fact that you have a high tariff does not mean that you have more revenue, because the compliance level will drop. The demand will drop. But if you review the tariffs, compliance level will go up, revenue will go up. Then we need to also address structural issues. Production in this economy is still not competitive. If you want to close your border, you must have at least done something substantial about issues of productivity within the economy. What is the cost of production? What is the operating cost? What is the cost of logistics? What is the cost of clearing cargo at the ports? So if you are talking of an economy, and you want the economy to even integrate within itself, there must be a means to integrate.
Away to Kenya now, where the second phase of the new railway line connecting the capital Nairobi to the Rift Valley region will be open today, and that's for passenger services only. Cargo services will have to wait for the construction of a dry port, which could take longer than planned after the local Maasai community moved to court to oppose its construction. The 120-kilometer stretch has been built by the China Communications and Construction Company at a cost of 150 billion Kenyan shillings or 1.4 billion pounds. But the standard gauge railway line project has cost close to 3 times the international standard and 4 times the original estimate. About 80% of the money for the railway came through loans from China, and the country will now need to borrow an additional $3.3 billion to complete the project. And protracted power outages by troubled states-owned African utility Eskom in South Africa could cost the country its last investment-grade credit rating from Moody's Investors Service on November the 1st. Eskom provides about 95% of South Africa's electricity. Power shortages have been a major constraint on output in Africa's most industrialized economy. The government has promised to announce plans to restructure Eskom into 3 operating units and reorganize its debt by the end of the month. Let's talk oil prices now. The rose early today, tracking gains in equities as investors pin hopes on a potential Brexit deal between Britain and the European Union, on signals from OPEC and its allies that further supply curbs could be possible. Global benchmark Brent crude oil futures had risen 0.3% to $58.95, and U.S. crude futures had gained 0.3% to $52.97 a barrel. Now, the metals market, gold prices edged higher in early trade today, and that was after shedding nearly 1% in the previous session on uncertainties surrounding Britain's negotiations to leave the EU, while the risk on sentiment capped the bullion's gains. Spot gold was up 0.1% at $1,482.54 an ounce, while U.S. gold futures were 0.2% higher at $1,486.90 an ounce. Among other precious metals, no deficit hit. Palladium rose 0.2% to $1,736.39 an ounce, hovering near its record high of $1,739.93 on Tuesday. For silver, it dipped 0.5%, and platinum slipped 0.7%, trading at $882.49 an ounce. And that's where we leave it today on our program. Thank you for watching. I am BC Adebayo.